The placebo effect. You've probably heard of it before. Maybe you've heard someone say that a treatment was just a placebo, like that's a bad thing. But here's the thing, the placebo effect is one of the most fascinating and honestly kind of mind-blowing phenomena in all of medicine. It raises a question that humans have been asking for thousands of years. Can your mind actually heal your body? Let me tell you right now, this is going to change how you think about medicine, about your brain, and about what your body is actually capable of doing. So let's get into it. First, let's make sure we're all on the same page about what a placebo actually is. A placebo is a treatment that has no active ingredient in it. It's a fake treatment. The most common example is a sugar pill. Imagine you go to a doctor and they give you a pill. You take it home, swallow it every day, and you start feeling better. But here's the twist. That pill was just sugar. There was nothing medical in it at all. No drugs, no active ingredients. Just sugar shaped like a pill. Now, the logical part of your brain might say, that's impossible. How can sugar cure anything? Sugar doesn't fight infections. Sugar doesn't reduce inflammation. Sugar doesn't do anything medical. And you'd be right. The sugar itself does nothing. But something did happen. You did feel better. So what's going on? That's the placebo effect. It's when you experience a real, measurable improvement in your health or symptoms simply because you believe you're receiving treatment. Your body actually changes. Your pain actually decreases. Your symptoms actually improve, but not because of the treatment itself, because of what's happening in your brain. And this isn't just people imagining they feel better. We can measure this stuff. Scientists have done brain scans on people experiencing the placebo effect, and they can see actual changes happening in the brain. They can measure changes in hormone levels. They can track real, physical changes in the body. This isn't make-believe. This is biology. So how did we even discover this? The history of the placebo effect is actually pretty interesting. The word placebo comes from Latin and it means, I shall please. It was first used in a medical context way back in the 1700s, but people didn't really understand what was happening. For most of human history, doctors gave patients all kinds of treatments that we now know did absolutely nothing: bloodletting, leeches, weird potions made from random herbs, and sometimes patients got better anyway. Doctors assumed their treatments were working, but a lot of the time, it was probably just the placebo effect doing its thing. The modern understanding of the placebo effect really started during World War II. There was an anesthesiologist named Henry Beecher who was working in a military hospital. They were running low on morphine, which was used to treat wounded soldiers in extreme pain. One day, a nurse did something desperate. She injected a soldier with saline solution, which is basically just salt water, but told him it was morphine. And here's the crazy part, it worked. The soldier's pain decreased significantly, even though he received nothing but salt water. Beecher was fascinated by this. After the war, he went back to the United States and started studying this phenomenon seriously. In 1955, he published a famous paper called The Powerful Placebo that changed medicine forever. He reviewed a bunch of medical studies and found that about 35% of patients responded to placebos. That's more than 1 in 3 people getting better from fake treatments. This paper convinced the medical community that they needed to take placebos seriously. This is actually why we now have something called double-blind, placebo-controlled trials. When scientists want to test if a new drug actually works, they can't just give it to people and see if they get better. Because of the placebo effect, some people would get better even if the drug did nothing. So instead, they split people into 2 groups. One group gets the real drug. The other group gets a placebo that looks exactly the same. And here's the important part. Neither the patients nor the doctors know who's getting what. That's what double-blind means. The patients are blind to whether they're getting the real drug, and the doctors are blind too. Then, after the trial, scientists compare the 2 groups. If the people who got the real drug did significantly better than the people who got the placebo, then the drug works. But if both groups improved about the same amount, then the drug probably doesn't work any better than a sugar pill. This system has revealed some uncomfortable truths about medicine. Many treatments that people swore worked turned out to be no better than placebos. Some treatments that doctors prescribed for decades were basically just expensive placebos. This doesn't mean medicine is fake. It means we need to be really careful about separating what actually works from what just seems to work because of the placebo effect. But here's where it gets really interesting. The placebo effect isn't just one thing. It's actually a bunch of different things happening in your brain and body, and scientists are still figuring out exactly how it all works. Let's talk about what's actually happening in your brain when you experience the placebo effect. One of the biggest players is something called expectation. When you expect to feel better, your brain starts making that happen. It sounds simple, but the biology behind it is pretty complex. Your brain has this amazing ability to predict what's going to happen and then prepare your body for it. This is actually really useful most of the time. If you see a bear, your brain predicts danger and floods your body with adrenaline before the bear even moves toward you. If you smell food cooking, your brain predicts eating and starts producing saliva and stomach acid before you take a single bite. Your brain is constantly trying to stay one step ahead of reality. The same thing happens with medical treatment. When you take a pill, your brain predicts that you're about to get better, and in response to that prediction, it starts making changes. It releases chemicals. It adjusts hormone levels. It activates certain neural pathways. Your brain is essentially trying to help the treatment along, and sometimes that help is enough to actually make you feel better, even if the treatment itself is doing nothing. One of the most studied aspects of this involves your brain's own painkiller system. Your brain can produce chemicals called endorphins. These are natural painkillers that your body makes on its own. They work on the same receptors as drugs like morphine. When you experience the placebo effect for pain relief, your brain is often releasing these endorphins. We know this because scientists have done experiments where they give people a drug that blocks endorphin receptors. When they do this, the placebo effect for pain disappears. This proves that the pain relief isn't imaginary. There are actual chemicals being released in your brain. But endorphins aren't the only thing involved. Your brain also releases dopamine during the placebo effect. Dopamine is often called the reward chemical, but it's actually more complicated than that. Dopamine is heavily involved in expectation and prediction. When you expect something good to happen, dopamine levels rise. This has been shown in brain scans of people taking placebos. The dopamine system lights up like they're receiving an actual reward, even though they're just taking a sugar pill. There's also evidence that the placebo effect involves the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for higher thinking, planning, and expectation. People with damage to their prefrontal cortex show reduced placebo effects. This suggests that the ability to form expectations about treatment is crucial for the placebo effect to work. Now here's something that really surprised scientists. The placebo effect doesn't just work on subjective stuff like pain, where you could argue people are just imagining things. It works on objective, measurable biological processes. Studies have shown that placebos can affect immune system function. They can change hormone levels. They can alter heart rate and blood pressure. In Parkinson's disease patients, placebos have been shown to actually release dopamine in the brain, which is exactly what Parkinson's medications are supposed to do. One famous study looked at patients with irritable bowel syndrome. Researchers found that placebo acupuncture, where they used fake needles that didn't actually penetrate the skin, significantly reduced symptoms. And when they made the fake acupuncture treatment more elaborate with a more caring practitioner who spent more time with patients, the effect got even stronger. This tells us something important about what drives the placebo effect. It's not just about the pill or the treatment. It's about the entire experience of receiving care. The ritual of taking medicine matters. The white coat of the doctor matters. The fancy equipment in the hospital matters. The attention and care from healthcare providers matters. All of these things contribute to your expectation that you're going to get better, and that expectation drives real biological changes. This has led to some really interesting research about how to maximize the placebo effect. For example, studies have shown that the color of a pill affects how well the placebo works. Blue pills work better as sedatives. Red pills work better as stimulants. This makes no biological sense because the pills are just sugar either way, but it makes psychological sense. We associate blue with calmness and red with energy, so our brains respond accordingly. The size of a pill matters too. Bigger pills generally produce stronger placebo effects than smaller pills, and capsules work better than tablets. Injections work better than pills, and surgery, even fake surgery, produces the strongest placebo effects of all. Yes, You read that right. Fake surgery. There have been studies where doctors performed placebo surgeries. They made incisions, pretended to do something, and then sewed patients back up without actually fixing anything, and patients got better. In some studies of certain orthopedic surgeries, the fake surgery worked just as well as the real surgery. This has raised serious ethical questions about some common surgical procedures. One of the most famous examples involves knee surgery for osteoarthritis. For years, doctors performed a procedure called arthroscopic debridement, where they would go into the knee and clean out damaged cartilage. Millions of people had this surgery. But when researchers finally did a proper placebo-controlled study, they found that patients who received fake surgery improved just as much as patients who received real surgery. The surgery itself wasn't doing anything. The improvement was all placebo effect. This doesn't mean all surgery is fake or useless. Many surgical procedures have been rigorously tested and definitely work better than placebos. But it does show how powerful the placebo effect can be, and how careful we need to be about assuming treatments work just because patients get better. Now, let's talk about something even weirder: open-label placebos. For the longest time, everyone assumed that for the placebo effect to work, you had to trick people. You had to make them believe they were getting real medicine. But recent research has challenged this assumption. In open-label placebo studies, researchers give people sugar pills and explicitly tell them they're sugar pills. They say something like, "This is a placebo. There's no active ingredient." But research shows that placebos can still help through mind-body mechanisms. And then they ask people to take the placebo anyway. The results have been surprising. Even when people know they're taking a placebo, they still experience benefits. Not as strong as when they don't know, but still significant. Open-label placebos have shown positive effects for irritable bowel syndrome, chronic lower back pain, cancer-related fatigue, and other conditions. How is this possible? If you know the pill is fake, how can it still work? Scientists think it's because the placebo effect isn't just about being fooled. It's about engaging your brain's healing mechanisms. Even when you consciously know the pill is fake, some part of your brain still responds to the ritual of taking medicine. The act of swallowing a pill, even a fake one, triggers certain neural pathways that have been conditioned over your lifetime of medical care. Think about it like this. You've been taking pills your whole life when you're sick. Every time you took a pill and got better, your brain formed an association. Pill equals getting better. This association is so deeply ingrained that it can be activated even when your conscious mind knows the pill is fake. It's like how your mouth can water when you see a picture of delicious food, even though you consciously know you can't eat a picture. This research has huge implications for medicine. It suggests that we might be able to use placebos ethically, without deception, to help patients. Some researchers are exploring whether open-label placebos could be used alongside real treatments to boost their effectiveness. Others are looking at whether we can train people to have stronger placebo responses. But before we get too excited about the power of placebos, we need to talk about their limits. Because as amazing as the placebo effect is, it's not magic, and it can't cure everything. The placebo effect works best on subjective symptoms, things like pain, nausea, fatigue, and mood. These are symptoms that are heavily influenced by how your brain processes and interprets signals. If you expect less pain, your brain can literally turn down the pain signal. If you expect less nausea, your brain can calm down the signals from your stomach. But the placebo effect doesn't work so well on objective disease processes. It can't shrink a tumor. It can't kill bacteria causing an infection. It can't regenerate damaged tissue. If you have cancer, believing really hard that you're getting better won't make the cancer go away. If you have a bacterial infection, a sugar pill won't kill the bacteria. This is a crucial distinction that sometimes gets lost in discussions about mind-body healing. Yes, your mind has incredible power over certain aspects of your health, but that power has limits. There are biological processes that your thoughts simply cannot control, at least not with current understanding. This has led to some tragic situations where people have rejected effective medical treatments in favor of positive thinking or alternative therapies that were essentially placebos. People have died because they believed the mind could cure their cancer when they actually needed chemotherapy. People have died because they thought they could think their way out of serious infections when they actually needed antibiotics. So while the placebo effect is real and powerful, it's not a replacement for evidence-based medicine. It's something that can work alongside real medicine to boost its effects and help with symptoms. But it can't replace treatments that actually target the underlying disease. Now let's talk about the flip side of the placebo effect, something called the nocebo effect. Just as expecting to get better can make you better, expecting to get worse can make you worse. The nocebo effect is when negative expectations produce negative outcomes. Here's an example. Imagine you're in a drug trial and you're given a list of possible side effects: headache, nausea, fatigue. Even if you're in the placebo group and receiving a sugar pill with no active ingredients, you might still experience those side effects simply because you expect them. Studies have shown that people in placebo groups often report the same side effects as people taking real drugs, sometimes at surprisingly high rates. The nocebo effect can be surprisingly powerful. In one study, researchers told patients they would receive a drug that causes headaches. The patients received a placebo, no active ingredients at all. But a significant number of them developed headaches anyway. Their expectation of a headache literally gave them a headache. This has led to a growing field called psychoneuromyology, which studies the connections between psychological processes, the nervous system, and the immune system. Researchers in this field have discovered all kinds of fascinating connections. Stress can suppress immune function. Depression is associated with inflammation. Social connection can improve wound healing. Loneliness can increase risk of heart disease. Your psychological state is constantly affecting your physical health in ways that scientists are only beginning to understand. The placebo effect is just one example of this mind-body connection in action. When you believe you're receiving treatment, your brain doesn't just passively wait to see what happens. It actively participates in the healing process. It releases chemicals. It changes how it processes signals. It coordinates with other body systems. Your brain is essentially trying to help make the expected outcome a reality. This raises some profound questions about the nature of healing itself. When someone gets better, what exactly healed them? Was it the medicine? Was it their body's natural healing processes? Was it their belief that they would get better? Or was it some combination of all these things working together? The honest answer is that we often can't separate these factors. Healing is complex. Most of the time, it's probably a combination of everything working together. The medicine fights the disease. The body repairs itself. The mind supports the whole process through expectation and hope. Trying to isolate one factor from the others is like trying to figure out which leg of a table is holding up the table. They all are. This has implications for how we think about healthcare. If the placebo effect is a real part of healing, then everything about the healthcare experience matters. The relationship between doctor and patient matters. The environment of the clinic matters. The way treatments are presented matters. The rituals and symbols of medicine matter. All of these things contribute to patient expectations and can enhance or diminish the effectiveness of treatment. Some forward-thinking healthcare providers are starting to take this seriously. They're paying more attention to the patient experience. They're training doctors to communicate in ways that enhance positive expectations. They're designing clinical environments that feel healing and supportive rather than cold and institutional. They're recognizing that medicine is not just about delivering chemicals into bodies. It's about the whole human experience of seeking and receiving care. Now I want to address something that often comes up when people learn about the placebo effect. Some people hear about this and jump to the conclusion that all alternative medicine works through the placebo effect, and therefore alternative medicine is legitimate because placebos are real. This is a logical error that we need to untangle. Yes, placebos produce real effects. Yes, alternative therapies often produce benefits that are probably placebo effects. But that doesn't mean alternative therapies are good choices for healthcare. Here's why. First, the placebo effect has limits. As I mentioned earlier, it works mainly on subjective symptoms. If you have a condition that requires actual biological intervention, relying on placebo effects instead of proven treatment could be dangerous or fatal. Second, there's an ethical issue with using placebos through deception. Traditional medicine tries to be honest with patients. When doctors prescribe treatments, they prescribe things that have been tested and shown to work better than placebos. If a doctor prescribes something they know is no better than a placebo, that's considered unethical deception. Alternative medicine practitioners on the other hand, often genuinely believe their treatments work through some special mechanism. They're not consciously deceiving anyone, but the result is the same. Patients receive treatments that work mainly or entirely through placebo effects, while believing they're receiving something more. Third, alternative treatments often cost money, sometimes a lot of money, for effects you could get from a sugar pill. There's something troubling about an industry that charges premium prices for what are essentially elaborate placebos. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, relying on alternative medicine can cause harm by delaying or replacing effective treatment. If someone with a serious illness spends months trying homeopathy or energy healing before finally going to a real doctor, that delay could cost them their health or their life. So while the placebo effect is real and interesting, it doesn't validate alternative medicine. If anything, understanding the placebo effect should make us more skeptical of unproven treatments, not less. We should be asking whether any given treatment works better than a placebo, not just whether it works at all. That's the relevant question. Let me tell you about some of the most fascinating placebo research that's been done recently. Scientists are getting really creative in their attempts to understand this phenomenon. One interesting line of research involves genetics. It turns out that some people are genetically predisposed to stronger placebo responses than others. Variations in genes related to dopamine, endorphins, and other neurotransmitter systems can affect how much someone responds to placebos. This suggests that the placebo effect isn't entirely in people's control. Some people are natural placebo responders. Others aren't. Researchers have even identified what they call the place bum, which is the set of genes that influence placebo responding. In the future, doctors might be able to test your genes to predict how much you'll respond to placebos. This could help personalize treatments. People with strong placebo responses might be good candidates for lower doses of drugs, since the placebo effect will boost the drug's effectiveness. People with weak placebo responses might need higher doses or different approaches. Another fascinating area of research involves learning and conditioning. Remember Pavlov's dogs, the ones that learned to salivate at the sound of a bell because they associated it with food. Something similar can happen with medical treatments. Scientists have shown that you can condition placebo responses. Here's how it works. First, you give someone a real painkiller several times. Each time, you pair it with a distinctive stimulus, like a particular cream applied to the skin. The person's body learns to associate that cream with pain relief. Then, later, you switch to a placebo cream that looks and smells the same but has no active ingredients. The person's body, conditioned by the previous experiences, still produces a pain-relieving response to the cream. This conditioning effect can be incredibly powerful and long-lasting. It might explain why some placebos seem to work better than others. Treatments that resemble real treatments more closely, or treatments given in contexts associated with healing, produce stronger conditioned responses. This research has practical applications. For example, some researchers are exploring whether they can use conditioning to reduce the doses of drugs needed for certain conditions. They give patients full doses of a drug for a while to establish the condition dissociation. Then they gradually switch to lower doses or even placebos while maintaining the conditioning. The patients continue to experience benefits even with less actual drug because their bodies have learned to respond to the treatment ritual itself. There's also fascinating research on the role of social factors in the placebo effect. Humans are social creatures, and it turns out that social context profoundly affects how we respond to treatments. Studies have shown that a warm, caring doctor produces stronger placebo effects than a cold, distant one. The more time a doctor spends with a patient, the stronger the placebo effect. The more confident the doctor seems about the treatment, the better it works. These social factors don't change the chemistry of the drug at all, but they change the patient's brain in ways that affect outcomes. This tells us something important about healthcare. The human interaction between provider and patient isn't just nice to have, it's actually part of the treatment. Doctors who rush through appointments and treat patients like numbers on a chart are undermining their own treatments. Doctors who take time to connect with patients and make them feel cared for are boosting their treatment's effectiveness. There's even research suggesting that you can experience placebo effects through social observation. If you see other people responding positively to a treatment, you're more likely to respond positively yourself. This might explain why testimonials and word-of-mouth recommendations are so powerful in healthcare. They set up social expectations that influence biological responses. Now let's consider some of the controversial and cutting-edge ideas in placebo research. These are areas where scientists are still debating and experimenting, where the answers aren't clear yet. One controversial idea is that we've been underestimating the role of the placebo effect in conventional medicine. Maybe some approved drugs work mainly or largely through placebo effects. Fifth, consider practices that might enhance your mind-body connection. Meditation, for example, has been shown to have real effects on the brain and body. Regular exercise has profound effects on mental as well as physical health. Social connection and community involvement support both psychological and physical well-being. You don't have to become a New Age guru to take advantage of mind-body effects. Just living a psychologically healthy life probably enhances these benefits. Sixth, be skeptical of people selling mind-body cures that seem too good to be true. They probably are. The real placebo effect is subtle and limited. Anyone promising miracle cures through positive thinking or energy healing or whatever is going beyond what the science actually shows. Be especially careful about claims involving serious diseases. That's where false hope can do the most damage. Finally, stay curious about this stuff. The science of the placebo effect and mind-body medicine is rapidly evolving. What we know today is a lot more than what we knew 20 years ago. And 20 years from now, we'll know a lot more than we know today. Keep an open mind about new findings while maintaining a healthy skepticism about extraordinary claims. The placebo effect is one of those phenomena that reveals how strange and wonderful our bodies really are. We're not just machines that take in chemicals and spit out reactions. We're complex systems where biology, psychology, and social context all interweave in ways we're only beginning to understand. Our thoughts matter, our beliefs matter, our relationships matter, and they matter not just psychologically, but biologically. This doesn't make us all-powerful. It doesn't mean we can think our way out of every problem or heal every disease with our minds. But it does mean we're more than passive recipients of treatments. We're active participants in our own healing, an understanding that can make a real difference in our health and our lives. The mind can't cure everything, but it can cure some things, and it can help with many more. That's not magic, it's biology, and it's pretty amazing. So there you have it. Everything you never knew you needed to know about the placebo effect. If you made it this far, drop a comment letting me know. Also tell me what topic you want me to cover next, because I love seeing your suggestions. Until next time.